Welcome into a moment of reflection with the Pickerington Church of Christ. This time together is devoted to taking what we've learned from the sermon this past Sunday and discovering how we can practically live these truths out in our lives. We encourage you to grab your Bible, sit down with some friends or family, and join together with us as we reflect on the Word of God, how to obey it, and how it can change our lives. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome in tonight to a brief moment of reflection from the sermon this past Sunday. We briefly have learned, welcome in, everyone. I'm glad you're joining with us tonight for this moment of reflection as we think back to the sermon that was preached this past Sunday, where we went from Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2, where we are told there by the Apostle Paul how we can unlock transformation in our life, and that comes through the renewing of our mind. I wanted to pause and come back to that thought with you tonight to talk about what our mind is and what really has gone wrong. And then hopefully we can see a little bit of how we can begin to have our minds renewed so our lives can be changed. You know, when you think about what a mind really is, it's more complex than just a simple idea. The mind is definitely part of our intellect. It's our brain, but it's also more than that. Our mind is the control center, you might say, of our entire existence. It colors the way that we view the world. It shapes how we think. The mind is the place where we dream. It's where we hold our values and our beliefs. The mind is what really drives our action. The Greeks really wove together when they talked about the idea of the word mind, thinking and feeling and understanding and even the human will. That's what our mind was. I love how the Hebrews, they had a couple different words to describe what a mind was. One of them is the Hebrew word rein, which is just like the word we would use if we were going to talk about reins that you use to guide a horse. And what the Hebrews meant by that was that the mind was the thing that directed and guided the human life. They also would use the word that we would borrow from to get our English word kidney. And if you think about what your kidneys do, their main function is to filter out the debris from the bloodstream of your life, which gives you the source of life. And so the Hebrews really thought of that mind in this sense, that it was supposed to filter out bad, filter out toxins, filter out debris, and allow the pure blood to flow into our lives, which is really truth, to flow into our minds. And so the mind was meant to operate, first of all, as the thing that directs us and guides us, but also filtering out thoughts and ideas that are not good so that we can keep the ones that are good. And if we have only good, truth-filled thoughts, our lives will be much, much different. So tonight I want to ask also, not just what is our mind, because the mind being the control center of our whole entire life is so vital for us to see, but also what has gone wrong with our mind. Let me read you a list of words that are in the Bible associated with the human mind to describe what has gone wrong. One of them is confused, twisted, deceived, hostile, corrupted, defiled, futile, blind, debased. Just listen to how the Bible describes the mind. It's broken. And there's something fundamentally broken because of sin that happens to our mind, the thing that controls our will, that decides who we are, that sin has ruined. And God has promised to transform our life by transforming and renewing our mind. And so as we ask ourselves what's gone wrong with our mind, I want to bring you to Romans chapter 1. In Romans chapter 1, let me give you a few verses, starting down at verse 18. Listen to how this reads. It says, "The wrath of God is revealed against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who," it goes on to say, "these unrighteous men suppress the truth." First point you got to get. Sin really enters our world and our mind gets messed up because we suppress the truth. He goes on to say, "For what can be known about God is plain to them. For although they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks to Him, but they became futile in their thinking." Number two, we suppress the truth, we become futile in our thinking. That means wasteful in our thinking. Our thoughts and our ideas, what we spend our time thinking about, becomes just really wasted time because we're not thinking about things that are good or true or healthy for us. So we're thinking about things that are wasteful because it's futile. So then he says, They became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. So our hearts then become darkened. We don't see things clearly anymore. When we suppress and lose truth, we move into futile thinking, meaning we think about things that are wasted. It's like if somebody lied to you about something and then you spent, hours and hours thinking about that lie, thinking it was true. Come to find out it's a lie, you're like, I just wasted all that time. If I told you, hey, I've got a job for you, I want you to earn $1 million a year doing this job, and if you come next week ready for the interview, I'm going to give you this job, and I describe what the job is, and you go home and you start researching and thinking about it and figuring out how to interview for it and developing the skills to do that job, and you show up the next week and go, oh, I was just kidding, I don't really have a job, I lied to you. All of that thinking that you've done over the past week, you would go, I just wasted all of that time. It was futile. So when we lose the truth and don't have truth, but believe lies, our thinking gets futile, gets wasted. We're thinking about things that are not helpful or good or beneficial to our life. Our hearts go dark. And what he means by that is really just the way that we view the world goes confused. It's not clear anymore because we're not living out of truth. We're living out of lies. Then he goes on all the way down to about verse 28 when he says that our foolish hearts are darkened. Therefore, God gave them up to the lusts of their hearts to impurity because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie. And 28 says, God gave them up to a debased mind. So do you see this progression? Loss of truth, which are lies, deception, hyperbole, misunderstandings. In this sin-torn world we live in, it is full of deceptions. That's really all Satan can do. That's his only real power, is to deceive, manipulate, and lie to us. He's the king of lies. He has no other power than to deceive us from the truth. That's all he's able to do. And so you and I tell lies to each other. We inherit lies from generations before us. We are told lies that we believe. And we even interpret the world with lies that we tell ourselves. You see, we don't always acknowledge this about ourselves, but our minds in sin, broken by sin, will see things or hear things or view things and then tell ourselves lies about what we're seeing. We might have interaction with somebody and we walk away and go, oh man, that was weird. Maybe they don't like me. What did I do wrong? Do I have something in my teeth or am I offensive? You see, we start to interpret things even by lies. So believing lies leads to a loss of truth, which leads to futile thinking. Futile thinking is pointless, useless. Futile thinking is having thoughts that are not helpful to us, that are just a waste of time. And we journey into futile thinking because we are responding to lies. So if we're responding in our life to lies, we're going to be thinking about things that are just pointless or useless. That leads to darkened hearts or darkened understanding. Darkened means like the loss of clarity. We're just not seeing things clear anymore. Our vision is obscured. And understanding is the fullness of our thinking. It's the combination of all the thoughts we have into sort of a summary. So my understanding is affected by believing lies and futile thinking. My understanding goes dark because I'm responding to lies, and really I formulate beliefs that are darkened, no longer based on truth. And it ends with, as Paul said here in Romans 1, that we end up, if we follow down this path of losing truth, wasted thinking, darkened understanding, no longer seeing clearly in the light, but not seeing clearly because of darkness, it leads to what the Bible calls a debased mind. Now that word kind of sounds a little scary, a little theological maybe, but debased mind literally just means it's no longer working like it was supposed to work. Your mind was always meant to contemplate, meditate upon, believe, and then live out from truth. God tells us what is true. Our mind reasons and thinks about and contemplates and makes sense of and has visions and pictures of what it's like to respond and live to what we've just been told and believe it. Your mind was meant to be a gift from God that gave us peace and joy. Romans 8:6 tells us. And we were meant to have a mind that was receiving and believing truth, and then living out of those beliefs and those thoughts, we follow God. But because we've lost truth, we waste our thinking now, pointless, useless thinking about things that are not true. leads to a darkened understanding. Our composition of all the thoughts we have, which become our beliefs, now are dark, no longer in the light. And that leads to a debased mind, which means simply this, that we are misguided in all the direction of our life on how to live because of lies. So as we think about renewing our mind, what is the main thing that we've got to get? And if you trace it back to the root, do you remember the beginning, the first thing? It's the loss of truth that leads us to a broken mind. So the only answer we have is truth. Jesus said, you will know the truth. It will set you free. That's what he's talking about. Now, truth sometimes isn't easy to hear. If somebody's got to tell you the truth about maybe a performance in your work or a relationship habit that is frustrating or difficult, you might not enjoy hearing the truth. But if you want to do better in your job, or you want to have a closer relationship with somebody and they tell you the truth, isn't that actually the freedom you need to get the thing that you ultimately want? Better performance in work, better relationships, whatever it may be, right? Truth is, whether we like to hear it or not, everything we need to unlock our mind to see the light and to change our beliefs and to live a different life. But the one thing that keeps us from wanting the truth is humility and courage. You've got to have the humility to go, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there's some things about life that I don't currently know. And I would advise you to start thinking that way, to acknowledge, hey, God, you know more than I do. So if there's thoughts I have that are not good thoughts, if there's truth that I think that I believe that's not really true, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. So have the humility to ask God to tell you what's true and what's not true. But then also you've got to have the courage to accept it. Okay, God, I may not like it, but give me the strength, the faith, the courage to buy it. And if you want to see your life begin to change, pursue truth wherever you are, your work, your relationships, your financial life, your spiritual life, everything. Submit to God who is ultimate truth. And if you know truth and base your beliefs off of truth, it'll set you free and change your life. Hope you have a